Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Walsh. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We got a good one for you, as always. On today's show, we start with some brand new news about Richard Spencer, the Navy Secretary, that differed in his private and public statements and is now being demanded his resignation from Mark Esper. Others said he angered Trump, and we'll find out what's going on with him. And a news story just coming out from New York Times. Take a look at what's going on in Bolivia, the coup that we talked about on a red alert. Also, we'll talk about Mike Bloomberg jumping on into the Democratic race and taking a look at a controversial article about Ryan Grimm about Elizabeth Warren. Also, the FBI, Prince Andrew, and an Ohio newspaper that is drawing headlines. We'll tell you why on today's episode. All right. Yeah, so Mark Esper, he's the defense secretary, and he demanded the resignation of the Navy's top civilian leader on Sunday, which was a pretty abrupt move aimed at ending an extraordinary dispute between President Trump and his own senior military leadership over the fate of a SEAL commando in a war crimes case. So, the fight is all about Chief Petty Officer Edward Gallagher, who was literally convicted of war crimes, but was pardoned by President Trump. In a statement, Esper said he lost trust in the Navy Secretary because of his private statements about the case that differed from what he advocated for in public. Esper said he was deeply troubled by this conduct. Senior Defense Department official and senior White House official said on Sunday that Spencer was trying to cut a side deal with the White House to let the commando remain in the elite unit, even as he pushed both publicly and with the Pentagon officials for a disciplinary hearing. Spencer also provoked Trump's ire by threatening to resign over the case and by publicly saying that he disagreed with the president's decision to intervene in favor of the commando, literally all advocating for him. So it's very, very confusing, and he has now demanded his resignation. So Spencer's friend cited those reasons for his departure, saying Esper was mischaracterizing the situation. Spencer's resignation letter, dated Sunday, said he regarded the good order and discipline throughout the Navy's ranks to be deadly serious business. The lives of our sailors, Marines, and civilian teammates quite literally depend on the professional execution of many missions, and they also depend on the ongoing faith and support of the people we serve and the allies we serve alongside. He says, unfortunately, it's become apparent that in this respect, I can no longer share the same understanding with the commander-in-chief who appointed me in regards to the key principles of good order and discipline. I cannot, in good conscience, obey an order that I believe violates the sacred oath I took. So it's very, very tough to kind of interpret what's going on here, because there are so many different, there's like multiple different tacks that he seems to take on this. Spencer was trying to cut a side deal with the White House to let the commander remain in the elite unit, even after being convicted of war crimes. He's trying to let him remain in this unit here. Even though he had said in public that he was deeply troubled by the conduct here. So Esper had said that he was deeply troubled by the conduct of Mr. Richard Spencer. So Spencer was trying to cut a side deal with the White House, but even as he pushed both publicly and with the Pentagon officials for a disciplinary hearing, that's what he was trying to do. So, he was just trying to go along and get along in public, but advocating for him in the inside. So that was the big problem there. Defense Department officials said Chief Gallagher would now keep his trident pin, the symbol of his membership in the SEALs, at Esper's direction because of concern that the events of the past few days would make it impossible for him to get an impartial hearing. So Trump railed against the handling of the case on Sunday on Twitter, saying that Chief Gallagher had been treated very, very badly. He announced that he would nominate Mr. Kenneth Braithwaite, the ambassador to Norway, to replace Mr. Spencer, an investment banker and Marine aviator who had held the job since 2017. So Chuck Schumer called Spencer a patriot in a statement on Sunday evening. Secretary Spencer did the right thing, and he should be proud of standing up for President Trump when he was wrong, something too many in this administration and the Republican Party are scared to do. Good order, discipline, and morale among the armed services must transcend politics, and Secretary Spencer's commitment to these principles will not be forgotten. So, yeah, Edward Gallagher, he recently got off. He was acquitted of serious war crimes, but convicted of a minor charge. Again, he has supported President Trump against the Navy's efforts to punish him. So, so that's pretty much how it works. They've kind of been in a tug of war about this for a while. The Navy prosecuted Chief Gallagher and wanted to expel him from the SEALs because it's just like this is not the way they do things. And when your opinion on something is harsher and probably is more pro-troop than the Navy, like when the Navy's mad at you for something that you did, and won't have your back, like you know that you really screwed up because the Navy really, they protect their own. That's who they are, and they're very, very hard notoriously to like prosecute their members. That's the same way with all the military. So Navy prosecuted Chief Gallagher, wanted to expel him from the SEALs, but the president, as commander-in-chief, has repeatedly intervened in the sailors' favor. So, yeah, that's the big kind of the big idea here. What he did, he's pretty much been SEALs from the platoon that Chief Gallagher led during a deployment to Mosul, Iraq in 2017, told military officials they saw the chief fatally stab a wounded ISIS captive. Navy investigators said while several SEALs were providing medical aid to the fighter, Chief Gallagher took out a handmade hunting knife and stabbed the captive, a teenager, several times in the neck and torso. The chief was also accused of firing a sniper rifle at civilians, striking a girl wearing a flower print hijab as she walked along a riverbank, and an old man carrying a water jug. Several SEALs broke the group's code of silence and testified against Chief Gallagher in a military trial, but still, he was pretty much acquitted for a large degree. So the jury acquitted Chief Gallagher of murder, attempted murder, and obstruction of justice charges, but the chief was convicted of one relatively minor charge, posing it for inappropriate photos with the dead captive, and then sentenced to 4 months imprisonment. Trump pretty much tried to pardon him from there. During the war crimes investigation, officials uncovered evidence that Gallagher had violated regulations in a number of ways. A live training grenade was found in his garage. Text messages were unearthed where he talked about using marijuana and narcotics with other SEALs. The behavior, along with... Excuse me. I'm so sorry. The behavior, along with his criminal conviction, has rankled the commander of the SEALs, Rear Admiral Colin Green, who has sought to rein in what some saw years of lax discipline on the force. A sailor can be expelled from the SEALs if the commander loses faith and confidence in the service member's ability to exercise sound judgment, reliability, and personal conduct. That's pretty much what they wanted to do. They wanted to say, you're out of the SEALs. But no, they were not allowed to do that. So the Navy has expelled more than 150 sailors from the SEALs since 2011, stripping them of the right to wear the trident pins that signify membership. Having the insignia taken away is a very, very serious consequence, and the dead take their comrades' trident pins with them to the grave. It's very, very serious, kind of like the symbol of all you've sacrificed and gone through. But he will be able to keep his trident pin. He's provided supportive messages, and the president also ordered less restrictive confinement for Chief Gallagher while he awaited trial, reversed his demotion, and restored his rank to Chief Petty Officer after the verdict, and last week announced that he would prevent the Navy from kicking the chief out of the SEALs. After Gallagher had his rank restored this month, he thanked Trump on Instagram, writing, "I truly believe that we are blessed as a nation to have a commander-in-chief that stands up for our warfighters." Yeah, and he's done this with people who've even been committed with more serious crimes recently as well. So it's kind of insane that he is that. He's really like, I can let our troops just abandon people, but if they commit war crimes, that's when I got their back. Yeah, so that's kind of the crazy situation there. So, all right, we're now turning the tide to another crazy situation in Bolivia, where more than 800 academics, activists, and public figures published an open letter on Sunday demanding that the United States and the international community end its support for the right-wing anti-indigenous regime in Bolivia that seized power following the military's ouster of former President Evo Morales. As Common Dreams reports. So what's happening in Bolivia is highly undemocratic. We are witnessing some of the worst human rights violations at the hands of the military and the police since the transition to civilian government in the early 1980s. This is again after their military dictatorship, reads the open letter, which was signed by renowned linguist Noam Chomsky, activist and academic Angela Davis, journalist John Pilger, and other human rights advocates. I'm pretty sure also AOC and his AOC, Ayanna Pressley, like Ilhan Omar Tlaib, other members of the squad, they also joined in signing it. So she also goes on to say, we condemn the violence in the strongest terms. The letter goes on to say, we condemn the violence in the strongest terms, to call on the U.S. and other foreign governments to immediately cease to recognize and provide any support to this regime. We urge the media to do more to document the mounting human rights abuses being committed in Bolivia. So the open letter, first published in The Guardian, came hours after the Bolivian legislature passed a bill to annul the results of October 20th presidential election, which Morales won the first round and set the stage for new elections. And it really is quite insane how they've moved on from this. Like, if you look on Twitter, which is, again, probably more people, like, look at that for a little bit of what's happening in the world. Like, they probably go to that more than really what's going on. Like, more people go to that for their news than CNN or MSNBC. You get, like, this tweets by this one guy. I saw this yesterday, just like, what? Like, they get tweets from this guy, one guy who just, like, I'm so happy about what's going on in Bolivia. It's just, I'm not crying, you're crying. This is just the best. Like, no semblance of putting in one little effort of just possibly maybe trying to portray the reality of what's going on in this situation, which is something, I think, in my opinion, just way darker in reality. Like, you just hear these stories, if you, like, just based on what I follow on Twitter, you hear these stories of MAS, which is Evo Morales' party, like their representatives pretty much just being forced out, pushed out, expelled from Congress, even though they had no role in the supposed crimes that were being committed here. And that's kind of the insane part, that this is still allowed to go on, and it really is disturbing. So Áñez represents the radical right sector of the Bolivian opposition, which has taken advantage of the power vacuum created by Morales' ouster to consolidate control over the state. Áñez appears to have full support of Bolivia's military and police. The letter states, equally disturbing has been a resurgence of public anti-indigenous racism over the course of the last week. Ongoing observers on the ground in Bolivia had voiced fears that the military ongoing repression of indigenous anti-coup protesters could spark a full-blown civil war. More than 30 people have been killed and hundreds more injured since Morales was overthrown earlier this month. All we hear is about, oh my gosh, anti-government protesters, Morales supporters. They're forcing a food blockade. That's a blockade of food trucks, and that's pretty much what we always seem to hear, right, about these. That's the extent of the coverage, but what we really don't hear is the fact that Bolivians are just getting gunned down by these police officers, and anyone who tries to protest, the indigenous people, their rights, the rights of the peasants, just they're being trampled on in an insane way. So that is I think, the frankly disturbingly underreported reality in this situation. So the military and guns has guns and a license to kill. We have nothing, cried a mother whose son was shot during a massacre at El Alto last week. So please tell the international community to come up here and stop this. So it is incredibly disturbing to see some of the stuff that's happening. A lot of violence being committed that we don't even know about and may not even really find out about for a very, very long time. So that's something definitely worth checking in on. So